Welcome to episode 8 of the Building Interactive website series, where we'll go over a basic review of CSS. So right now we're able to add content to our website, but we can't really add color or spacing or change the layout of it or style it in a unique way. The first way of adding CSS to a website is by making use of an external style sheet located somewhere else. This one is located on the same directory as the sandbox. So to add it to our page, we can use the link tag and add it inside the head element of the page. In order for the browser to actually register this as a style sheet, we have to set the rel attribute equal to style sheet. And then we can add another attribute, href, for where the actual style sheet is located. In this case, it's located in the root directory in example.css. So we can say a slash to go all the way back to the root directory and then example.css. Now if we run the code, you can see the styles are applied. Secondly, you can add a style tag inside the head element. A style tag is used for internal style sheets, where you want the styles to be in the same place as the HTML code. In this case, I can just copy and paste this code from earlier. And now you can see when I run the code, these styles are applied again. Finally, there are inline styles, which you can apply simply by adding the style attribute to an element. And in here, you can add CSS. So for example, if I set color to red, then you'll see this paragraph is now colored red. However, this method is kind of hard to maintain and is really difficult to read compared to external and internal style sheets, and it mixes CSS with HTML. So this method isn't often used, but you might see it in others' code. CSS code is formatted like this, where you first start with the selector and then curly braces, and inside of it you put a property name and then a colon and then the value of that property after it and then a semicolon. This can also be repeated to apply multiple CSS properties to an element. Some examples of selectors, and we can test this by making use of a property that's visible easily. So let's set the color to red so that it's easy to see selectors in action. So if we want to apply this style to all of one specific element in the page, like for example, apply the style to all P elements, we can just set P as the selector. And now you can see it selects all the paragraphs. If we want to select only one element with a specific ID, then we can use the hash symbol and then the name of that ID. So for example, if I wanted to select this paragraph with an ID of test, we can type test in here and it'll only select that paragraph. Class names, which are defined using the class attribute, and multiple classes can be added as well. So if we separate them with spaces, then here you can see this has the class of both example and example2. The way we select classes in CSS is by using a period. So dot example selects all elements with the class of example, and we can test dot example2, and you'll see it only selects this p element with example2 as a class. Additionally, we can combine selectors together by making use of the comma operator. So for example, if we wanted to select both H1 and P elements and set their color to red, then we could set H1P with a comma in between, and it'll select both H1s and paragraphs. And we can change these selectors as well. So in this case, it'll select the heading and the paragraph with the ID of test. Now let's go over some notable CSS properties. Firstly, you can change the color of text making use of the color property, and you can either use a named color like maroon or a hexadecimal value like ABCDEF, which looks like this, or an RGB value using the RGB function and passing in 3 arguments between 0 and 255. So in this case, red is 255 and green and blue are 0, so it'll be fully red. Next, you can apply a background color by using the background color property, and this takes in the same argument as color. So you can use a name color, hexadecimal color, or RGB color. In this case, I'm going to try a name color like blue, or possibly light blue. And now you can see this has a light blue background. Additionally, you can change the spacing of elements by using the margin property. For example, if we set margin to 5 pixels, then 5 pixels of space will be created around it on all sides. We can increase this as well to 50 pixels, for example. And then if we add a second value, then this first value will define the top and bottom margins, and this second one will define the left and right margins. If we add a third number, then 50 pixels will be the top margin, 10 pixels will be the side margins, and 3 pixels will be the bottom margin. And then finally, we can add a fourth value in. And so 50 pixels is still the top margin, 10 pixels is the right margin, 3 pixels is the bottom margin, and 100 pixels is the left margin. We can also add padding to an element, which means the space inside of it. So for example, if we do 10 pixels of padding, you can see the background extends 10 pixels, and the element size also increases. We can add multiple values just like margin, and it'll work exactly the same way. As in, the first value is top, second is right, third is bottom, and fourth is left. For more things that you can do with CSS, I already have plenty of tutorials on various things you can do with it. So if you're curious about more CSS related content, then you can take a look at all of these videos. There are also much more CSS properties and selectors that exist than what I've gone over in this video. So if you're curious about those, I'll link some online resources in the description. This video is just meant to be a short summary of what CSS can do and how to use it. So this concludes episode 8 of the Building Interactive Website series. Thank you very much for watching.